I've got the youngest crew on the boat that I've had in 20 years right now. We've got the old timers. We've got Monty.
Upcoming Apelio season, and so you want to get this done.
You don't do that. Go to bed or go on deck. Get out of my face.
Just now, on the turbulent decks of the Bering Sea, Captain Keith Colburn's fury erupted like a storm, setting the stage for one of the most intense confrontations ever witnessed on Deadliest Catch. Carper, new and already faltering under the relentless pace of crab fishing, missed yet another morning task, pushing him to the brink. Will this explosive encounter with a cameraman turn the tides of the season? Tune in next time to see how a seasoned captain handles the breaking point, tension and turbulence. Carper's struggles on the boat were clear from the start. As someone not accustomed to the intense routines and challenges of deep-sea fishing, he had a hard time keeping up with the crew's expectations. Small but critical tasks like consistently making coffee or adhering to strict schedules were problematic. This was not just about missing out on morning routines, though. His inability to adjust to the crew's fast-paced and high-pressure environment became more obvious as the season progressed. Oversleeping was another recurring issue that irritated his colleagues, especially since everyone else was dealing with the relentless demands of life at sea. In a profession where coordination and punctuality are crucial, such lapses in discipline caused friction. One stormy night, the waves hit the ship hard. Carper had to secure the mainsail to keep the ship safe. His hands shook from the cold and the heavy responsibility. As he fought against the fierce wind and rain, a strong gust pushed him towards the edge. With his footing slipping and the loud ocean below, his fate was uncertain, right on the edge of danger. Captain Keith Colburn was already under tremendous pressure during the season, with long days of unproductive fishing compounding the stress. After hours of work with no results, frustrations ran high. Known for his hot-headed temperament and tough leadership style, his patience was frequently tested during such challenging moments. When Carper's repeated mistakes became too much, he finally lost his cool. The incident escalated quickly, with his voice rising above the sound of the waves, calling him out in front of the crew for his oversleeping and failure to perform basic tasks. He didn't hold back, even going as far as physically confronting him when he followed him after the initial argument. This tension wasn't just about one crew member's behavior. It was reflective of the broader challenges that come with leading a crew under extreme circumstances where even small mistakes could snowball into bigger issues. He has never shied away from expressing his frustrations, both with his crew and with the challenges of the sea. His temper has gotten the better of him in the past, and the altercation was one of many instances where the pressure of his role led to conflict. He later admitted that such outbursts often stem from accumulated stress rather than one-off incidents. Working in an environment where there's little margin for error amplifies tensions, and as fatigue builds, so does the likelihood of heated confrontations. But this wasn't just about a missed pot of coffee. His outburst was really the result of days of built-up stress and frustration after working hard with very little success to show for it. In the middle of a rough ocean journey, a man is up against the full force of nature. He's battling winds at 60 knots and huge waves that could send 50 tons of equipment crashing across the deck. This could tip over the entire boat. He quickly orders his crew to tighten the chain in the middle. The tension is high as they try to secure everything from the ocean's relentless push. Jacob Hutchins, responsible for making sure all the pots are tied down, realizes something is wrong. The pots on the bottom aren't fastened well, and they start to slide dangerously. He quickly figures out that the ties on top won't stop the gear from moving. It's the ones at the bottom that hold everything in place. With the storm getting worse, he now understands that each pot needs 2 strong ties at the bottom to keep them safe. Captain Sean is furious about the mistake. The crew is now tearing apart the stacks of gear they had spent hours putting together. They have no time to waste as the winds are getting stronger and the storm isn't slowing down. The need to secure everything becomes more urgent by the minute. The captain, Sean DWI, pushes his crew to move faster, knowing they're running out of time. They're in a race against the storm, trying to offload the gear before things get even worse. Every second counts in this life-or-death struggle against the storm. But this isn't the worst part. There's still more danger ahead. The ocean is unforgiving, and even a small mistake could lead to disaster. Every knot tied, every move made, could be the difference between survival and catastrophe. Sean was in a hurry to get his crab pots into the water before a big storm hit, which could force them off the sea. It had turned into a race against time. He still had 50 pots left to place, and with the storm getting closer, the pressure was building. After a great king crab season, where he made over $500,000, Sean was excited to get back to bay crab fishing, something he hadn't done in a few years. His plan for this trip was to catch up to 20,000 pounds of bay crab, which would be a big haul. He was aiming to find spots that were full of bay crab, instead of other types of fish. Sean carefully picked his locations, looking for areas with sandy or muddy bottoms, which were known to be good places to find bay crab. As the storm got closer, the situation on the boat became more dangerous. The waves were getting bigger, causing the crab pots to swing around, making it risky for the crew. Sean's cousin Luke, who was new to crab fishing, was having a hard time keeping up with the fast pace of the experienced crew. Everyone was shouting instructions to help Luke keep moving and stay safe, even though they were working in chaotic conditions. As the waves calm, the story continues with how Carper and the crew navigate the aftermath of their conflict. A tale of unity and urgency. They all knew what was at stake. If they didn't get the pots in the water quickly, they'd be stuck out in the storm. But this wasn't just about working fast. It was also a mental challenge, as they had to keep their focus and steer the boat through rough waters while racing against the clock. The ship moved up and down through the rough sea, heading towards St. Paul with everything on deck tied down and the fishing pots left to the deep waters of the ocean. Strong winds, reaching 45 knots, pushed the boat straight into the heart of the storm. Captain Sean Dwyer, calm and focused, guided the ship through the rough waves, aiming for safety from the fierce storm. The crew, tired after working hard, rested while the ship was rocked by large swells that tested both their strength and the ship's ability to stay steady. In the middle of all this, a small problem appeared. Luke, one of the crew members, had swelling in his hands. It wasn't serious, but it was still annoying. To keep their spirits up, the crew cracked jokes, showing their bond and lightheartedness even in tough times. As they finally anchored behind St. Paul, the storm only got worse, with winds now hitting 50 knots. The young captain wasn't willing to take any chances. The crew prepared themselves for a long wait, knowing that the storm had full control, and it wasn't going to let up anytime soon. But things were no better for Captain Jake Anderson, who was aboard the Saga. He had his own battle to fight, as he sailed 40 miles south through roaring winds. As he set his fishing gear, the storm turned the ocean from a flowing, moving body of water into something that felt as hard as concrete. The weather was pleasant for now, but he couldn't help feeling that a little bit of chaos made things more thrilling. Today, he had set off roughly 40 miles south, hoping for better luck. His last few trips had been disappointing, with only small catches to show for his efforts. He had been working hard, though this time, he was on his own. Before this, he had teamed up with Keith and tried heading north, but that hadn't gone well. Now he was as far from those northern waters as he could be, steering clear of the bad luck that seemed to follow them there. That day, the young captain braved the worst weather of the season, deciding to take on the challenge alone. It was a bold move, almost a desperate one, and he knew it. As he guided the ship through the choppy seas, he made sure to remind his crew to stay cautious. The starboard side of the ship was getting the worst of it, constantly battered by wind and waves. It was the most dangerous area, with all the gear out in the open, and the crew had no choice but to work close to the edge. The wind howled and the ocean churned violently as they tried to move thousands of pounds of metal across the wet, slick deck. This was no easy task, and it was risky. One wrong step could be deadly. Every man on board knew they had to hold on tight as the ship pitched and swayed in the heavy storm. Despite the harsh conditions, they were hopeful as they reached their designated fishing spot. The crew was on high alert, lights flashing and the equipment set up. Everything seemed ready, but just as they got to work, disaster almost struck. Josh Taylor, a newer member of the crew, made a critical mistake while handling the bait bags. He lifted his foot at the wrong moment and it became tangled in a line attached to an 800-pound crab pot. In a heartbeat, the heavy pot nearly dragged him overboard. It was a terrifying reminder of just how dangerous their job really was. Those massive crab pots were like medieval traps, capable of seriously injuring or even eliminating someone if they weren't careful. This was a sobering moment for the crew, and they hoped Josh would never forget how close he came to a tragic accident. Captain Shadow felt a chill as he stood on deck, staring out at the endless waves that seemed to stretch out forever. The memory of the many sailors lost to the sea weighed on him as he gripped the cold railing of the ship. Ahead lay over 290 miles of open ocean, a daunting distance between him and the safety of Dutch Harbor. Though the wind had begun to die down, it still blew with a force that couldn't be ignored. With the storm easing, the crew was preparing to haul up the first pot. There was no way to know what it would bring. Maybe it would be full of crabs, or maybe it would come up nearly empty. Shadow, dressed in his well-worn gear, thought about the other pots they had dropped into the sea days ago. Every pot was important now, especially after the storm had driven them from their usual fishing grounds. They needed a good haul to make up for lost time. He watched as his crew got the crane ready, their movements quick and practiced. Everyone was hoping for a strong catch, but the reality of their work meant that hope didn't always guarantee success. Some pots came up with only a few small crabs or ones that couldn't be sold, leaving the crew disappointed. As the winds began to settle, a new chapter was on the horizon, signaling the crew's readiness to face whatever lay ahead. The perseverance of a young captain at sea. Shadow, always calm and steady, understood the stakes. Each pot they pulled from the ocean was a small battle, a test of their skill and perseverance. He knew that it took more than just determination to be a successful fisherman. It required patience and experience to thrive in such a difficult, unpredictable environment. As the crew worked under his close watch, they knew that every crab they brought aboard counted. There were still 100 pots left to pull, and Shadow held on to the hope that the next few would bring in the catch they needed. The weather was improving and the vast sea was clear before him, but he remained cautious. His focus stayed fixed on the horizon, knowing the sea could be as harsh as it was beautiful. Yet this was only the beginning. The worst was yet to come, and Shadow knew the ocean had ways of testing even the most prepared captain and crew. As the storm began to ease, a young captain found himself in a difficult position. After hours battling the rough seas, he had only managed to pull in 5 crabs per trap, far below what he needed. The clock was ticking, and he knew he had to act fast to fill his boat before time ran out. Navigating through unfamiliar waters, he quickly shifted his focus. It was now all about speed, getting the crabs aboard, resetting the traps, and heading home as fast as possible. His future depended on the success of this journey. This was his first season in charge of his own vessel, and he had placed 150 traps in the southern waters, betting on a good haul. Now, as the first trap was pulled from the depths, the moment of truth arrived. The contents of these traps would decide not only the outcome of this trip, but possibly the rest of the season. As each one surfaced, the crew's anticipation grew, with thoughts of home flashing through their minds every time a crab was added to the haul. When the traps were brought on board, they revealed exactly what the crew had hoped for: crabs averaging nearly 7.5 pounds each. The captain couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. This was the break they desperately needed. The crew's morale soared as their tanks started filling up faster than they had imagined. It seemed like luck had finally turned in their favor. The crew shared in the excitement as they marveled at the size of the crabs. Each new catch brought a fresh burst of energy. They knew they were getting closer to their goal, and the boat was filling up with a large, valuable catch. With 71 big crabs already packed into the tank, the captain felt like they were on a winning streak. But this wasn't just about hauling in crabs. For the captain, it was about proving himself, overcoming the relentless challenges of nature, and testing the limits of what he could achieve. Every crab brought them closer to their goal, but more than that, it was a step towards securing his reputation. As the ship groaned under the increasing strain, a deckhand, struggling to contain his frustration, called out to the crew, trying to grab their attention amidst the growing chaos. Urging them to hold on tight, his voice barely carried over the noise of the storm and the crashing waves. Meanwhile, another crew member warned everyone to watch their heads as the situation on deck became more intense. The air was thick with tension, a mix of nervous energy and the sharp sting of saltwater spray. Voices raised in anger as frustration boiled over, with one crew member angrily insulting another. Then, a loud bang broke through the commotion, followed by an ominous creak from the ship's bow, hinting that something might be seriously wrong. The urgency on deck escalated as someone demanded an immediate check on the bow. The engines roared back to life, the crew rushing to follow orders to power up and steer the ship sharply to the left. Every movement was fast and precise as they tried to regain control and prevent further disaster. For a brief moment, the ship steadied, giving everyone a chance to catch their breath and assess the damage. The crew gathered to discuss the possible impact, hoping that the worst had been avoided. A small chip in the metal where the anchor had hit the hull caught their attention, a minor but worrying sign that all was not well. Confusion spread among the crew as they questioned what could have gone wrong. One particularly bewildered crew member voiced what many were thinking, asking whether the engines had failed or why the ship had come so dangerously close to another vessel. As the immediate danger passed, the mood shifted from panic to problem-solving. The captain, realizing they needed to focus on the damage, called for everyone to stop the blame game and start assessing the situation. Both crews began inspecting their ships, prepared for the worst but hoping for a more manageable outcome. After a closer look, they discovered that the anchor had absorbed much of the blow, potentially sparing the ship from a far more serious incident. But even with this relief, the close call served as a reminder of just how risky navigating the open seas could be. By the end of the ordeal, the crew of the Wizard knew they had been lucky. The anchor's position had acted as a shield, saving them from a direct hit that could have led to disaster. They had faced not only the unpredictable dangers of the ocean, but also the emotional roller coaster of panic, followed by relief that came with life at sea. Was Captain Keith's reaction to Carper's mistakes a necessary show of leadership, or an example of poor management during high-stress situations? Comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more discussions.